Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm going to try to break the internet by actually showing my face on this one. I hope all of you are having a good Monday um, when this is going to get uploaded. I hope that if you're not in class, that I get to see you in the next class period. And we're going to talk today about the definition essay. The definition essay, unlike some of your other essays, has only one prompt, but this prompt allows you a wide variety of choices as to how you're going to go about composing this essay. So let's start at the beginning. Use the following prompt to compose a well-written definition essay. The Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary defines zeitgeist as the general intellectual, moral, and cultural climate of an era. I would contend that it's also the general intellectual, moral, cultural climate of a place. And by climate, we can talk about the general mood of an era, the general mood of a place. The dictionary's entry goes on to say that scholars have long maintained that each era has a unique spirit, a nature or climate that sets it apart from other epochs. In German, such a spirit is known as Zeitgeist, from the German word Zeit, meaning time, and Geist, meaning spirit or ghost. So, what we're looking at is, as I've said, the general mood of the place of the time. So, how would you label the zeitgeist of Mount Marty in the fall of 2022? And your label should be a single word or a short phrase. So, for example, if I'm going to label the zeitgeist of the United States of America in the fall of 2022, I'm going to perhaps talk about resigned panic. That would be a phrase. And those two things are perhaps a little bit oxymoronic in the sense that resignation means you've given up, panic means you're going crazy worrying about stuff, but some kind of, you know, not necessarily depression, but some term like that. Zeitgeist can also be just single words, hopeful, cheerful, but it has to take not just what you think is important about Mount Marty, but what is the general mood of the campus? What is the general climate of the campus as you perceive it? And there should be, like I said, a single word or a short phrase. And then you can write a 3 to 4 page essay defining the term and explaining why the term is a valid label for Mount Marty's current zeitgeist. The essay should include the formal definition, in other words, what comes from the dictionary, and at least two other types of definitions. There will be in class another video presentation talking about examples, talking about analysis of the qualities of something, of attributing characteristics to something, defining it by telling me what it's not, making some analogies, or defining it by showing what it does. And so you have all of these options that you can look at, and we will talk about all of those in the future. But you need the dictionary definition, and you need two of these six that are on screen right now. So as you take a look at those, I think it's important to understand that your definition essay is going to incorporate several different types of definition. I'm not sure that this is the best way to discover the label, but I think it's one way. When we think about Mount Marty, my friends and I feel. Now, obviously, a word like good isn't going to tell you anything. Do you feel optimistic? Do you feel pressured? Do you feel nervous? Do you feel joy? Another way to do it is to say Mount Marty is X because. Mount Marty is educational because people go to class, right? I mean, that's the simple and rather silly way to go about it. But Mount Marty is this because of these reasons. Okay. And what activities best illustrate life at Mount Marty? What word best describes those activities? So if you're running around the dorms late at night, what's the best word to describe those activities? If the activity is just going to class, what word best describes those activities? And it can be positive, it can be negative. The only person looking at these is me. Many of the answers can be adjectives. And it may be possible to adapt a noun to define the Mount Marty zeitgeist. And to give you an example, if we're going to describe Earth's climate zones, you've got tropical and dry, which are adjectives, but highlands is a noun, and it's used to describe a climate zone. So if you can find a noun, go with God and be happy. Final copy for the Monday, Wednesday, Friday class is due November 7th at 2022 at 11:59 p.m. The final copy for the Tuesday, Thursday class is due November 8th. And the essay should, as I said before, 3 to 4 pages. As always, work to proofread better than I do. And again, remember there's no grace period for these sorts of papers. Also remember that in addition to submitting them via the Google Classroom, where I will be correcting them, we will also be using Turnitin and getting those submitted for a couple minutes in each class period after the due date. So the next class period after November 7th, the next class period after November 8th. Remember the format, get your name and all of that. I've given you 2 examples. Actually, I've used nouns in both of them. Ennui as the zeitgeist or community as the zeitgeist. Both of those would work. Remember that you need a title. It should be in the default font. Remember what we talked about with the titles. 6 words or fewer, punchy, to the point, sorts of things that make you want to read. Remember plagiarized work. As always, I'll be running through this sort of format. Look, you need a thesis. This one, I'm going to basically be going down the line. You need all 4 things on this essay. Okay? You need all 4 things. Your thesis will probably be telling you why, in addition to what. The organization certainly needs to go from the formal definition into the other 2 definitions. There certainly has to be some clear transitions. Are there concrete details to give me why your definition is valid? I think make sure you're breaking things down into analysis, to show how and why. Can you make an arguable claim with your thesis that Mount Marty's zeitgeist is X? Write an active voice. Let's see what the blue squiggly line is telling me. No, not in an active, so we're just going to leave it as is. Avoid putting new points in the paper's concluding paragraph. I think that happens quite frequently when people sit down to write it, 5 hours before the paper's due, and you're writing a rough draft in effect, and then you finally figure out what you're writing in the paper's concluding paragraph. If you can, try to do it, 24 or 48 hours before it's due. Come back, look at that concluding paragraph, and probably actually move that up to your intro, create the thesis out of that, and follow that order throughout your entire paper. Write in third person. If you're doing a couple of examples where you're involved in those examples, that's fine. But for the most part, this should be in third person. Everything about the definition should be third person. So write in third person. I think that about wraps up the assignment. We'll talk about it in class. If you have questions, remember there's the 1 question, 1 comment every class period where you'll be able to ask questions about the essay. There'll be a video in slides in class. There'll be a video talking about the various types of definitions that you have to use to follow through. But again, I hope you have a good Monday, and or had a good Monday if you're watching this later in the day. And I hope to see you in the next class period.